Then
You
it's
do the intro as always.
Yes, we're
Do we
together.
need to introduce?
Yeah, we will introduce. This is Sandra Dodd. We find her wonderful and we love talking with her. So here we are again. Hi, Sandra.
hello. Thanks for having me again. It was fun.
It's always fun.
And I just started the recording. So because you were about to say something wonderful. So if you just start where you were before I hit record, please.
I had said we should talk about games and YouTube before we get to the good stuff, which is healing in the parents. So I know that people always say, well, it was different when your kids were young. They brush me off that way because the world was different. We had dial-up internet or whatever. Okay. Well, I was unschooling before we had dial-up internet too, just a little bit, before there was anything for kids online. But if people are going to live by rules, it's easy. You just, kind of figure out what your friends are doing and you make rules about it. You have to go to bed by this time. You have to do this. You have to do that. And that's the rules. Just don't ask questions. I'm the parent. I make the rules. It is very easy for parents to be approved and praised and to make friends by being very controlling and bragging about it. And you may have been in conversations where the parents are just bragging like crazy about how they make their kids do this and that, and their kids would never do this and that. So I don't think that ever has contributed well to anyone's unschooling. And one of the things that I brought into unschooling from another hobby I had where we talked a lot of philosophy was to make decisions by principle. Like, why? Don't think about what you're going to do. I'm doing this because that's what we do. But why? Why are you doing that? And so if limiting children is being done because it seems traditional or it seems virtuous or it seems safe or it makes a person a good parent, that's not a why that leads to a good relationship between the parents and the children or to a partnership between the parents and the children. So I just think regardless of what the it is, whether it's video games or internet, paying attention to what the children are interested in and want to do and could learn from and are drawn toward is more important than worrying about what other parents think about you letting them do that. And I think that must have been true for unschoolers before there was internet. There were a few unschoolers who were just exchanging letters with John Holt. And they didn't have all the tricks and tools that have been developed over the years. And I don't know that any of them could have unschooled their children throughout, from childhood through teens, through being adults. But that's been done now by quite a few people. We have an example in the United States that other places might not have as strongly, and that's the very strict fundamentalist Christianity. It's mostly in the Southeast United States. And I grew up in families that were not actively, my parents didn't actively go to church. I did, but just voluntarily because there was music there. I went everywhere there was music and they'd let me sing or whatever. And so I went to church because I liked to be somewhere besides my house. And that was a good place to be. And I liked a lot of the people there and I didn't like all of them. But the thing is, in the families who so easily said no, no, no to their children all day, those are the kids who, when they got older, became very sneaky and running around and drinking. And, they said, never say bad words. And I went, what the hell? Because it wasn't in my house. But those kids, when they got away from home, were nasty mouthed, drinking, awful. And so that had nothing to do with electronics or video games. But I saw that pattern early. And the parents who said, well, I don't know, well, try it. Yeah, you can drink in the backyard. Don't tell the neighbors I let you. Those kids got their experience young and didn't go crazy when they went to college or whatever. So I knew that. So I knew that if I told my kids, no, don't even touch it, don't look at it, don't think about it, that's the way to make them think about it. Like, I think surely the only people who would, other than biology students or anthropologists, the only people who would really read Darwin would be kids who were told evolution is of the devil. And, the world was created in 6 days. And, if you think or say anything different, you could burn forever. Those kids are more likely to read Darwin than my kids.
Yes.
because it was forbidden. It was a secret. My kids played video games from the time they were really little. And when my husband and I didn't know whether to encourage it or not, my son, whose oldest was 5, and he really loved Ninja Turtles. And so we watched an episode of Ninja Turtles in a critical way, like as parents, right? That was before we knew we were going to unschool, I think. Maybe he was 4. And so we watched it, and then we're kind of laughing. And Keith said, this is Japanese management theory, because at work, he was an engineer, and they were teaching them all sorts of different corporate models for communication and management and stuff. And so he's like, okay, there's 1 leader and 4 people with different skills. And so we're like, okay, that's kind of cool. Even to this day, you can ask someone who was born in the 80s, so which Ninja Turtle are you most like? It's like a therapeutic question.
Yeah.
And the answer they give you, know a lot about how they see themselves and how they would like to see themselves. And, at one time in history, they would have said, who's your favorite saint? Or, so what of fairy tale characters, which one do you most identify with? But it works with Ninja Turtles and young men. So we didn't discourage that. And then Nintendo came along with a Ninja Turtle fighting game, and we got him one. We got him one because we were in a babysitting co-op where the parents would take turns, we'd keep points. And so there was a family where he went that had a Nintendo game, but they kept it in the closet. But when Kirby came over, they would bring it out and let him play. And then it got to where he would only play that. He loved it so much, he wouldn't play with the other kids. So I would show up and he would look up and say, I want to play with Chris and Liam. But because the game was there, it was so alluring that he couldn't look away. So I know a lot of parents would have said, see, he's an addict. Take it away from him. No one should like anything that much. And I thought, he loves it. There's something about that game that engages him completely. And so what we did so that he could play with Chris and Liam was we bought one. So
Yeah.
when he had one at home and he could play it all he wanted to, then when he went to Chris and Liam's, he didn't want to play the game. He wanted to play with them. So I got to see that even before I was really unschooling. And I said, okay, this is important. Those same kids weren't allowed to watch TV at their house. And when they came to our house, if it was on, we would remember to turn it off after a while before they came in. Because if they came in, they would just, no matter what was on, they would just be mesmerized and they would stand and look at it. They couldn't pass by it. And the kids are like, let's go play. Let's go in the backyard. Let's do this. And they couldn't even hear them. So things like that. In the discussions in those days, I would say, oh, this thing happened. What do you guys think? And other people would report similar things. So we were collecting data without it being a study, just evidence for other people who came by later. And that's all still on my site. So the people who were saying, well, no, I think it's addictive. I think it's that. Very wise people like Joyce Federall and Deb Lewis would write up what they thought was or was not addiction, and what is fascination and hobby, and the burning interest that someone has in flowers or knitting or rescuing wounded animals. That's not called an addiction.
But that's also on the parent approved list.
Right.
Yes.
So I just decided not to worry about what other parents said and to just look at my kids, and it turned out well. And 2 of my kids learned to read from watching video games, because there's reading involved there. And the other day in a discussion, someone was saying, an unschooling discussion, how do you get your kids to read? And when people first come to that idea and that question, they're thinking books. Reading equals books. And think about menus and street signs and video games and the instructions for board games and all the things where reading is, where you really need reading, the internet, to know which thing to click. I have 4 little grandkids who can't read yet. And so they're all like, Grandma, which one? Grandma, which one? Because it's like next or stop or, hard or easy. And once they can read those, which won't be too long, that's real reading, because it's reading for a purpose. It's actually interpreting language for an actual need, not to do a monkey trick for a teacher. So I wasn't afraid of it, and it didn't prove to be scary. And because they knew they could play it later, they would turn it off if somebody needed them to. Also, I wouldn't be rude about it. If I came and turned a game off on someone, which I never did and never would have, it would be like if somebody grabbed a novel out of your hands and threw it in the fireplace. without regard to whether you were even at the end of a paragraph.
Yeah.
It's really relationship killing. And there were people who would put timers on games. They would say you can play for an hour, and they would put a timer on it so that it turned itself off like that, no matter where in the game they were. And I just thought that was cruel, because I've played games, I've worked jigsaw puzzles. I wouldn't have liked somebody to throw the puzzle in the trash and I was almost through, or had just even sorted out the border. You know, when someone's involved in a project and there's progress being made and there's a success level, other people should stay out of it and not, if they can help, help, and if they can't help, stay out of it. That's my opinion about games, and the meanness that can go with it and the disadvantage of limiting it. I mean, I have more opinion, but that's one closure point.
So I think, of course, I agree. I think you're smart, so I tend to agree. But I do agree. All the things that we forbid, they become more interesting. And what's the difference between being very excited about a video game and being very excited about drawing cats? It's being very excited about something. I think we should really stop ourselves from judging what our kids do. But I do, at the same time, think that something has changed. And even being an unschooler, I still sometimes worry. I still sometimes.
Well, you need to get over that, because
I'm not sure. I mean, maybe I do need to protect my children a little bit from the big bad internet. I'm happy when they play a game.
Play the games before you say this game isn't worth time.
I don't have a problem with the games.
It's actually not the game.
Games.
We're changing the subject now. Okay.
So what I am worried about, what I don't like still, and still need to get over, but also find a way where I feel my kids are in an environment that is okay, is the voice chat, the anonymity, whatever. People are anonymous, and they can say whatever and get away with it. They can be really mean. Some games have very mean discourse. Some games are so loving and people are so nice to each other. It seems like it's cultural inside games.
That's true, but you never know. An individual can come along in a most peaceful situation and be a dick. So it can't be controlled or guaranteed.
No,
that you can be in a place where somebody won't be hateful. So this is what I think about situations like that. You can't you can't child-proof the world.
No,
you need to work.
Can pay attention. That was what I think it's one of the key things you said before, is pay attention to what they do, and maybe try to watch an episode or play the game. You can pay attention, but I find it harder for me personally to pay attention to what they do online and what they experience online, because I don't know, it's just a big bad wolf out there. And I think some of it is really more big bad wolf than what I am comfortable with letting my children. I do let them. So let's just start there. I personally do let them, and we don't have screen time measurement or child safety things on. But I'm just not necessarily happy with it. And I think a lot of unschooling parents, we didn't grow up with this. We don't know what it is. And it's very hard I can see what they do and I can feel the vibe of it with most of the things they do, except for when they are online. Then they have their headphones on and they have their little chats and lots of things happen. And then maybe 3 months later, they need to talk about something. And I'm like,
Okay. What if they went to school though? They would be spending lots of time in places where.
It's one of the reasons they don't, because I don't want them out there.
Oh, I didn't know they were not going to school because you were afraid. Stop. What I'm saying is, of all of the humans in the world, in those families where the kids go to school, they spend lots of hours where you don't know what people are saying and how they're being and whether they're honest or kind. And so parents are used to that. So if the internet provides that opportunity for them to be in a place where you're not watching their every move and knowing everyone they're interacting with, that situation is not abnormal. and unschoolers shouldn't protect their children from all access to the earth. They shouldn't always be holding their mom's hand. They can't, but also probably shouldn't. When my kids were little, those opportunities came from the gatherings of families, and unschoolers in those days would always have park days and get together in public and like that. And kids would run off. Parents were near, but they weren't right there with them. But I think if you're letting your kids do that, they have access to those things, but you're still afraid. Maybe it would help philosophically to realize that those fears have always been around. And if you go back far enough, you come to the time where the kids were not with their parents after they were 10 or 12. They were off working on farms or whatever, being in the freaking military at the age of 14, or terrible historical things that we think are terrible, that they saw as normal. But when in our own grandparents, great-grandparents stories, it's like, oh, what's going to happen with the radio? Do we let our kids listen to radio shows? Oh my gosh. They're talking about murder on those radio shows. And then TV comes along. It's like, oh, we're going to let our kids watch that TV and see the news and see wars in other countries. That's terrible. And it wasn't interactive. That's true. They weren't able to lure someone to tell them particularly something. But I think if the principles are there, that it's good to be kind, it's good to be helpful. You don't have to be around people who are mean. You can avoid people who are not being kind and generous and honest. Then you give them an invitation to come and tell you if they've seen things like that are bothering them. It might not bother them. They might go, okay, this guy's not very nice, but he sure knows a lot about this game. Or this guy's not very honest, but I'll just assume that what he says isn't true, but he's fun to play the game with. And adults make choices like that. You probably have friends from childhood that all of the dumb things they've done and all the idiot things they've done. And maybe you don't. I do. I have some friends who aren't particularly honest, but their stories are entertaining. I just remember not to repeat them as something that actually happened, but as an entertainment. I think kids having practice with that as kids is valuable, so that they don't encounter it for the first time when they're grown and there's money involved, or alcohol involved, or other things. So I know it's scary, and my grandkids are online, and there are things out there, philosophies and proposals to come and join our this or that belief or cult or weirdness. But I think that's always gone on, at least at school or church. On the side, there'll be some subgroup, subset that if you were welcome to ask more and to be more involved. And some of those were dangerous and illegal and stupid, and some were kind of cool. So it may be good practice at a distance for your kids to practice interacting with people who aren't actually at your house, who aren't pulling up in a car and beeping for them to come out. They're just voices at a distance, largely. And if home is safe, why would they want to be closer with those people than with their family? And that was, when I was a kid, the big argument was, don't go to the bowling alley, don't go out with anybody at night. So it was like a bunch of rules. Don't go in the barn with the neighbor. I'm like, why? I didn't know why. What might happen in the barn with the neighbor? And so if the principle had been, be where other people know where you are, don't trust everyone, try not to be alone with someone you don't really know very well, don't keep secrets with other people. Those ideas about the danger of secrecy, the danger of being isolated and not having a witness, not having other people, that will help more than rules about what to do and where to be, I think, is understanding why parents worry about who you're with and what they might do.
I believe that one of the joys that had come with this life of unschooling our children is the connection that we have with them, and Cecilia's connection is stronger than mine. She is their primary person, and what I see is that the connection is so strong that they share what they have experienced, and they share their sadness if something have went bad or not. And that is a gift I see come with unschooling, where I don't when I look back at my own life, I didn't share so much with my parents in the same way. The connection was not as strong. So yes, there is things out there. There's YouTube that now have you down to 15 seconds videos just going past your head. And it is stressful, but it's the world that is there. And I think that by them experiencing it and talking with us about it, they learn to be in it and have the connection where they can grow, actually.
I've seen some kids, and I've had some friends and relatives who would not tell their parents their problems, because if they said, my friend was mean to me, the parents say, then you can never play with that friend again, ever. No advice about can you fix it? Can you decide what the value is or the disadvantage? They just say no. And so they would just see it as a way for their parents to say, well, then never go on the internet again, or never play that game again, because it's easier for the parents to just, the parents think they fixed it, but they haven't really fixed it, because all they've done is create another closed door for their children to try to sneak through or get through, or for the kids to learn to not tell their parents. So yeah, that's a problem. I mean, that's why you might not have talked to your parents. Just at a guess, it may not have anything to do with it.
One of the challenges or dialogues we have had with our youngest is about it's a wonderful game, Fortnite. There is so much fun in it. He's very happy about it. But the adrenaline level you're driving at while playing it, it's like a sniper game where you're sniping each other. That's basically what Fortnite is. And you're 100 people going into an all-out battle, and there's one winner kind of game. Being in a game like that for 20 minutes, when you then go offline, reality is it's not as fun, and it takes time to come down for that adrenaline rush you are on. And one of the things I'm talking with him about sometimes is, yeah, but you need to learn to handle coming down, because it looks so, I cannot play it. I get dizzy with these first-person shooter games, but it looks like a game that is really, really funny, and they have a lot of joy with it. But you can also see that they are hyped up on a level that would take some knowledge to go out in, and I was about to say real life after that, but gaming is also real life.
Kids like adrenaline, especially boys. Kids my age was skateboards and making homemade ramps and jumping bicycles off of them.
Yeah.
Or, not where I lived, but other people swinging on a big rope and falling in water. That's more dangerous than sitting on a couch playing a video game. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So when people go, this game is so violent, this game is so terrible for him, he gets so excited. It's like, where was he sitting? On something soft, right? At your house, right? You could see him. You could hand him a sandwich. It's not like the danger of, take a gun out in the woods and try to kill rabbits, where other people are also out in the woods trying to kill rabbits with guns. It's just, there are so many dangerous things that boys have done in the past that didn't involve on their mom's couch, that I just have a hard time not laughing sometimes when people are going, that game is so violent. Show me the bruises. Did he get stabbed? Is he bleeding?
Yeah.
Oh, he's sitting on the couch. He's not violent.
Mm.
It's like reading a spy novel. When people read spy novels and bad guys are chasing somebody through Bruges or wherever it always is, it's always in some European town with little roads, and they're going to get you, and then they're going to torture you, and it's like, okay, nobody was actually tortured reading that book, unless they hated the book. Then they can close the book. Saved. Any kid who's too upset by a game can turn it off. It's like closing a book. Only a really cool book with pictures that you can affect. It's like choose your own adventure by the second.
Mm.
And that's very cool. So people who understand how fun it is to read, even, like Harry Potter, Here Comes Voldemort. Oh, that's terrible. That's going to give you some adrenaline if you're involved in that. And it's the first time you've read it, especially. That's exciting, but it's also a book. They're not actually Harry Potter facing Voldemort. But it's like riding a roller coaster. You can get the thrill of fear and not knowing what's going to happen, that sort of adrenaline, like fight or flight. I don't know if it's a tiger or not. Maybe nothing. I may have to about to save my own life. And that adrenaline in the absence of a tiger can be fun, can be entertaining. People pay money for it, to bungee jump or whatever. So I don't think that that's a crime or aberrant behavior to want to be excited.
I don't think that there's anything wrong with being excited. And I don't have a problem with our kids playing computer games as such. My problem is with more like, it's very easy. It's a very easy thing. It's easy access. You just sit down and turn it on, and then it's fun. You don't need for these things a lot of patience. And I mean, I'm letting go as much as I can, but I wouldn't be comfortable if it was an all-night thing, which I see a lot of in the radical unschooling community, that the boys, they stay up all night playing, and I don't, quote unquote, allow that. I think we sleep at night, we sleep at the same hours, we are awake when the sun is out, and playing for 12 hours a day would make me very uncomfortable. I think they will benefit from having other go-tos. And if my children came down to having only one go-to, I will eat, sleep, and play, then I wouldn't be comfortable with that.
Is that what unschooling's about? I
don't know, but at the end of the day, I will end up. So I'm having this conversation with you because I think I'm probably not the only one thinking this way. And I would say I'm an unschooling mom, but it's not a religion to me. If I feel, no, this is not right, then it might be unschooling, but I'm not doing it.
You think it's a religion for me?
What?
You think it's a religion for me?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I don't at all.
I think the principles, if you go by principles instead of rules, it changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're having your kids go to sleep when you sleep because you're traveling and you want to get up and do something, you have a tight schedule, you have places to go, that makes sense. It's like you're living on vacation in a way, because they don't have a calm, safe place where they could just sleep for a week if they really needed to, if they felt like they didn't feel good and wanted to just stay in their bed. Can't do that when you're not home.
No.
If you were in a situation where the child was home, my oldest used to stay up all night playing games sometimes, or communicating with friends online, mostly unschoolers that were in other towns. And I knew that sometimes he was still awake at 5 a.m, and I just used to tell him, just be asleep before your dad goes to work, because I thought his dad was going to get mad if he saw him. Then one day, Keith called me from work and said, Kirby was still up at 5 a.m. He was playing video games or whatever. And I said, yeah. And he goes, I didn't know he did that. That was kind of cool. He seemed like in a good mood. Whatever, my husband wasn't upset about it. So I said, okay, do whatever. But that kid had a job too, and he came home at midnight. So when he came home at midnight, he worked at a gaming store. So he would sleep till noon or 1 some days. If it was Saturday, he had to go in early to run the Pokemon tournament. But if it wasn't one of those days, he'd sleep late and then go to work. And sometimes till 11 or midnight, they would play Magic the Gathering and things over there. They sold those cards. But at night, they have table games. And he would come home awake, because on other people's schedule, like he woke up and he went to work and now he's got some hours. Yeah. And I didn't mind that his schedule rolled around like that, but we weren't all having to do everything at the same time. He still did everything else he was supposed to do. He went to work, he went to his karate classes, and so he worked around it himself. And I thought that was a valuable skill. He has had jobs that started all around the clock, 4:30 in the morning, started 11 at night for a graveyard shift when he worked at Blizzard Entertainment. And he has never had a problem getting up and doing what he needed to do. But he wasn't on after he was little.
My hesitation is probably not so much about the day or night thing. I think it's more about the prioritization. Like, I think it's important that we get to share some hours of the day. And as you say, we live in this radically different way where it just wouldn't work. Very often we share one bedroom and we need to get some sleep. It's better to coordinate it. So there are many contextual reasons for the sleep thing. But what I do worry about, and maybe I can learn to let go of that, but what I do worry about is, will it absorb, will it be more interesting than looking out on the dolphins in the ocean? Will it be?
If that game is more interesting than looking out at the dolphins in the ocean, then that child should absolutely play that game. The reason that they close curtains on schools or paint the windows or put kids' art all over the windows is, what if a person walking by on the sidewalk or a car going by or a bird in a tree is more interesting than what the teacher is saying? So they eliminate that option. And very often it would have been more interesting. And if so, maybe that's what the kid should be looking at. So that's my belief, is that if what you're thinking about is balance,
it is.
You can't balance someone else. You can only balance your own self. If you think about a board on a roller, or a skateboarder standing up in a bus or a plane, you can't balance another person. And they can't learn to balance if somebody else always thought they were balancing them. So it just, in general, philosophically, that's what I think about other people making decisions for what's more interesting or what should be more interesting. I think it could be a problem long term.
I think you're very right.
But when we've gone on vacation, there have been times like we all have to go to sleep because we all have to get up at 6. But those were exceptions. It wasn't being at our own house. That may be a factor that makes a big difference. And if you're saying, oh, I limit my kids, I totally tell them when to sleep and that dolphins are more interesting than video games, then other people who listen to this are going to think, then it's okay. They're unschoolers and they limit their kids, and it's great. It's good for me to do. And I think that's about rules, and it's not about principles.
It's not about what?
Principles.
Yeah.
So for the record, if anyone feels they want to be inspired by me and think I'm an unschooler, I don't tell my kids when to go to bed. I actually don't. We go to bed when we're tired, and that's usually the same time of the day. I tell them if they want to stay up, 1 or 2 of them, later than everyone else, and we share one bedroom, I ask them to be quiet when they come. I don't tell them dolphins are more interesting than video games, but I do sometimes. I'm just trying to be honest here, because I think this is a struggle that other unschoolers do have, and we try to find our way. And sometimes I do get worried, which is kind of stupid, because my data contradicts my worries. My kids do get up to look at dolphins if there are dolphins around, unless it's a very peak moment in what they're doing, where I wouldn't get up either myself if I had a peak moment in another project. So it's not that these things are actually happening. It's just that because this is such an unknown territory for me, something that is different from what I understand the flesh and bone of, my head spins around these things. I tend to think, how do I, what? And I mean, even with all the freedom that I am doing my very best to provide for my children, as to whatever you want to eat, whenever you want to sleep, whatever you want to watch, whatever you want to do, I'll try to give you the computer you need, or the ball you need, or the art supplies you need, and the time and the space and whatever. It is still me and my husband, and well, all of us as a group, negotiating, are we buying another computer now, or are we buying plane tickets to get to whatever place? We don't have infinite hours. We don't have infinite money. We don't have infinite energy. Do I sit down and study whatever history of whatever country with one child, or do I sit down and do an arts and craft workshop with another child? I have to decide that as well. Do I sit down and learn to play Fortnite, which is not interesting for me, but maybe that's what I need to learn?
No, I wasn't saying you need to learn it. I was saying, if a person hasn't played a game, then they don't really have a basis for having an opinion about it.
I have actually played it.
Yeah, you came 6.
I came in number 6.
Yeah, that was badass.
Out of how many?
I did on 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's 6 out of 6.
My strategy was to hide, and I got shot the first time I came home.
And you have no kills, right?
I had no kills, but I came 6.
Yeah, yeah.
You can't take that away from me.
No.
Well, 2 of my kids have jobs that seem to have been enhanced by their ability to play video games, or it didn't hurt. And another thing about games is it's not just like doing a jigsaw puzzle at all, because there's also time and speed and all these things that a lot of games, other traditional table games made out of cardboard and paper, can't possibly have. And there are strategies, especially of the first person games, not necessarily first person shooters, but game where it's you interacting with other characters in the game. It's got the aspects of a novel, and it's got the aspects of a movie, and it's got the aspects of a puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
You need to get from here to here. How? There are these people who will come and give you clues. It's like what's the new thing? The escape rooms. It's like
yeah, it's a bit like that. Yeah.
Only you're still on the couch.
Mm.
You don't have to go to some room where strangers have touched everything. You know, some people are still germ phobic these days, and I don't blame them. And so it's another safety issue. You get all the excitement of bungee jumping or escape rooms without having to leave the couch if you want. Your mom will let you.
Sandra, I work, my line of work is marketing, which is fun in the way that if I look at gaming, for example, the more I think about it, and in this conversation, I'm like, I actually do not have a big problem with gaming, but with the social media and YouTube and stuff like that, they are so effective time wasters. I myself can see how they affect me when I've had stints where I was sitting watching YouTube shorts, and then half an hour went by. And then the fun part comes. What I find fun is now I started reading instead. I'm actually a little less stressed because it's another tempo, so it does something different for me. But in my value system, it's better to sit and read for half an hour than to sit and watch YouTube shorts for half an hour. So it's me judging what is going on, and myself. Yeah, I judge
yourself.
I judge myself, and when I see others sit and watch YouTube shorts, I'm like, I know it's fun, but it's what do you get out of it? And there's sometimes good stuff that comes out of it. But from the marketing point of view, in my mind, I'm like, ooh, that's a lot of ads they're selling at the same time. Where games, you purchase a game, you pay for the enjoyment. That is a different ball game in my world.
Sometimes I watch the comedians on YouTube, the little short parts of comedians.
Yeah.
There aren't ads, and I can just go from one comedian to the next.
Oh, yes.
And one night it was 2 hours, but I found a couple of really cool things that I shared with somebody who would really like it. And I thought, okay, I'm a big kid, I could turn that off, but that was more interesting to me than the other things that everybody was, my husband was asleep. I didn't have any place to go the next day. And every once in a while, a comedian I really liked would come up, or one I would skip. And it was nice to see best parts, little parts.
Yeah.
And people complain about, well, that'll make your attention, what's the word? Your attention span short.
Yeah.
Who cares about long attention span? Long attention span is about listening to a teacher for 50 minutes. That's why they wanted people to have long attention spans, so that a teacher could drone on for almost an hour and people could sit there with the windows painted over and be okay. But
is the windows painted over an actual thing?
Yes, in schools. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I've never seen that.
You missed that? Ooh, yeah.
Oh,
No.
Wow.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't think long attention span is a virtue in the world. I don't think it's a biological fact, because if in hunter-gatherer terms, you're not doing anything for a whole hour. You're walking, you're looking, you're thinking, you're finding, you're picking, you're gathering, you're storing. It's motion, a lot of little things. And I think most things are a lot of little things. So the idea of a longer attention span is sort of I think it's school related. I'm not positive, but I think it's school related. So even when you go to the doctor,
What?
school related. It's a school skill that they wanted to encourage. When Sesame Street, I don't know if you know about Sesame Street, it's an American TV show that came out in the 70s during school reform. And what it was they said, little kids will run into the room when there's a commercial on, and they can sing those commercials. They have those commercials memorized. As soon as the commercial's over, they leave the room because they don't want to watch the TV shows. They're not interested. Unless there are little kids or dogs in the story, they don't care. But the commercials are interesting and engaging because they have music, colors, and so they said, let's make an educational program. It was in the days of Head Start. There was a federal program in the United States to help poor kids get ahead because they weren't doing well in school. And so they said, sometimes kids who are poor, whose parents aren't around, are not getting the basics, or kids who are not English as a first language are not getting the things that they need to succeed in first grade. Okay. So they said, let's make a show that's all commercials. That's all commercial length.
Build up like commercials, yeah.
It was moving. Is the wind blowing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think our computer is on a table and the wind is making the table move.
Oh,
Are you
okay.
getting seasick?
No, I just wondered if it was okay.
Okay, it's not us.
Not gonna fall. The
Table.
table, it's not gonna fall. Okay. Yeah. So then years passed, and people complained about Sesame Street causing short attention spans. It's like it was designed. That was the purpose, to not have any story, any part of it that was longer than a couple of minutes. That's how they built it. And now it's all changed by people who had no idea about the days of little kids running in to memorize commercial jingles. So that's interesting to me. That people who really cared about how kids learned and helping little kids learn designed something very elegant, award-winning, that caused many other shows to be created in that way. And now other people didn't get it. And they said, oh, from watching Sesame Street, they have such a short attention span. It's like, no, because short attention span is normal. They learned a whole bunch of things from Sesame Street. So anyway, I think that about YouTube Shorts, I suppose too. That maybe the commercials are the best thing. Sometimes a commercial is interesting, and if children, you can't tell children never watch a commercial. It's good to discuss with them why commercials are designed as they are. How are they trying to appeal to you? Because that becomes rhetoric, and that's a high level of thinking, to think about how something is designed to get your attention. And I like the idea. I think there was some, I don't know, Greek something about you can't cover the whole world in leather, but you can make leather shoes. And so in speaking terms, that becomes, you can't childproof the world, but you can world-proof your child.
Yeah. And also the short and long attention span, if we are in the realm of gaming, I hear my sons talk about, oh, in this game we are 185 hours in, and in that game we spend, oh, this game is short, it's only 45 hours. That's a lot of time invested in one adventure. That's long attention span. It's doing something for a long time. And I think we are demonizing the media as such, like the entire computer. Sometimes they sit down for hours and read something online, or so it's more.
Listen to music. That's
I
where
think
music
we need
is.
both. I mean, we also need, some of us need to do some of the academia. Some people like to read really long and boring, quote unquote, old novels from Russia. And you need to focus to do that. But I think it's not always been for everyone. And those who do like that will probably keep doing it. And those who do like to do other things will do that. I don't think that one necessarily stops the other, but I do, and that's what I'm trying to say here. Sometimes I still worry. Sometimes I'm like, is this healthy? But
Yeah.
then, as you say, you can make leather shoes. Then we have a conversation about that. I get to say, I'm worried about this. How do you all feel? This, when I do this, it makes me feel like this. How, when you do it, what happens to you? And then maybe they find gold in the shorts, or they say, yeah, it was a waste of time. I don't think I'll do it again, or whatever. So it's so, as you said also earlier, so much better that they get some experience with the unperfect world while they are on the couch, or at least in some proximity where we can have a conversation about it, maybe while walking and looking at those dolphins or whatever. We talk about all these worldly things and the commercials and the shorts and the longs and the Russian novels, and everything comes up and gets like grinded. That's the key of the core element of our unschooling experience, is the talking.
A hypocrite feeling I've seen in myself is that I often love to do some projects, some different kind of project, and I would love to work on my project. I would feel better if my kids did a thing I found more valuable in my value system while I didn't use time together with them, which is a little kind of hypocrite.
Especially because your project is sitting with the computer on the sofa.
Yes, I'm sitting with the computer on the sofa, working on something I find
You
fun.
find that interesting and
Yeah,
important.
yeah.
But
Then I feel more fine. And I feel more fine with our daughter sitting and cutting the dogs and working with them than the boys playing the computer game. And I have of course seen the hypocrisy of it, and therefore I'm fine with mentioning it, because it's like, oh yes, but you're stupid. So, but it's fun that the fun part of it is, actually, I believe that sometimes we as parents, in general, not us as such, um, would like that our kids spend time with something we had put on a list of this is valuable stuff, while we do not spend time with them. And that's the hypocrite part.
Oh, yeah, that's a problem. But I really like that my daughter has some of the same interests I have. That's exciting to me. And I think, oh, she's a genius. Not, oh, she's wasting her time the same way I did. But other people might go, oh man, she's wasting her time the same way Sandra did. Really interested in 60s rock and roll and in language and the history of English and the little details of words in English. My daughter loves that. She sees things that I never saw in the history of words. And so I that excites me. But that excites me because I'm interested in that thing. I would still worry about stuff. I still worry about, it's just silly. It's like, the analysis of what happened and what will happen and what's my fault. It's that. I think that's normal in moms.
But I think also, I mean, we cannot balance other people, but we can look at, as parents, we're not neutral. I mean, we do play a significant role in their lives, and the context that we give our children, the opportunities, the vibe, the nutrition, even the temperature in the room. There are many settings that fall back on my decisions that will affect how they feel, and I mean, I can help them to balance. And maybe the unschooling perspective, or what I do as an unschooler, is I don't judge as such the activity, but I do look at the thriving or not of the child, the balance, if you want. And just ask, are you sure you're happy right now with, and I don't do it while they play Fortnite or while they, whatever. I mean, but we do it while going for our walks. I'm like, is everything good and fine? Can I help you in any way? Is there anything, you need? And in that way, we do play part of the balance of our children's lives. Of course we do.
That's just communication. I don't think that should be considered balancing their lives so much as just staying in communication with them. And ideally, the kids will tell you if they're not okay. I had fears too, and people have fears. And what I did to try to still mine was to think, are they learning? So if I had a tiebreaker moment, it was like, are these kids learning? And I accepted that they would learn things that I didn't think was on the top 10 things that kids should learn. And that was okay, because I knew that these kids needed to know more about computers than I had. And there were no computers when I was a kid. And so giving them the opportunity to be on computers and all the things that computers did and developed and added as time went on seemed like letting them live in the world that they were actually in, instead of a fantasy world of mine, or a let's have nostalgia for my childhood. Because I know all parents have a little bit of that, or they assume that school is like it was when they were kids. And I didn't want to do that. So I consciously tried to move with them into the future instead of dragging them back into my own past.
It's a good strategy. And I also very much liked, if we're sort of ending, I think the leather shoe analogy is a very good analogy. Or, don't try to child-proof the world-proof the child. It's a good little sticker note to put on the fridge for whenever we worry about whatever, actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for the people listening, we will actually just keep on talking, but we will cut this episode into 2 episodes, where the first part here, we have enjoyed talking a lot about the fears we can have as parents in terms of video games and YouTube and all this. And then the next episode will be about healing. So for the people listening out there, thank you for this time. And next week, we are going to talk again with Sandra Dodd, which for us is the same time.
Now.
Bye.